What do you do when your dream park opens and the food is better reviewed than the rides? Well, if you're Disney Imagineering, you don't pack it up, you rebuild. From its rocky opening in 2001 to its billion-dollar glow up a decade later, Disney California might just be one of the most dramatic comeback stories in theme park history. Welcome to Pop Culture Passport, your ultimate guide to quirky and cool destinations across the US. I'm your host, Beth Scalacci, aka the Roman Yeti, here to help you dive into the world of theme parks, uncover film and TV locations, and explore quirky museums, roadside attractions, and legendary venues that capture the heart and soul of this unique country. So grab your pop culture passport and let's discover destinations that resonate with your interest, not just with what's trending on social media. Are you ready? Let's roam! Welcome back. Today we're heading west to Anaheim, California, for a story about reinvention, resilience, and redemption. This is the evolution of Disney California Adventure, a park that started as a love letter to California, and well, it's become something much bigger. Now, DCA, as it's known now, is one of my favorite Disney parks, so I'm so glad Disney learned from their mistake and they continue to rebuild. Because sometimes, even in the happiest place on earth, a great story starts with, well, a spectacular flop. Now, before Disney California Adventure ever existed, there was a bigger dream, a park called WestCOT. And in the early 1990s, the Walt Disney Company was deep in something they called the quote unquote Disney decade, a time when then CEO Michael Eisner wanted to bring the same resort model that worked in Florida to Anaheim. Now, Disneyland was still mostly a one-day destination and it was mainly for locals. So Eisner's goal was simple, turn it into a multi-day resort that could compete with Walt Disney World. Well, that meant they were going to need to build a second gate. And WestCOT was supposed to be the crown jewel, a West Coast version of EPCOT, complete with a futuristic space station Earth spire that would have been taller than Matterhorn. Guests would stroll through versions of London, Africa, Asia, and New York, riding upgraded classics like Horizons and Journey into Imagination. But there was one problem. Anaheim wasn't ready for it. Residents pushed back hard on the proposed size of that giant white spire, worried it might dominate the skyline. Meanwhile, construction costs had started skyrocketing, and Disney was still recovering from some financial setbacks elsewhere in the company. So in 1995, the project was just quietly canceled. That failure forced a creative reset, and Eisner gathered a team of executives in Aspen, Colorado, and gave them a new challenge. Come up with a second park that was cheaper, faster, and simpler to build, but uniquely Californian. Well, that's where we got the concept for Disney California Adventure. And it was a fascinating compromise, and maybe even most ironic one in Disney history. Instead of celebrating the world like Epcot, the new park would celebrate California itself, the state where Disneyland was already set and visited mostly by Californians. So, from the start, the park was built under a very different philosophy than the other parks: cost control over creativity. Can you imagine with Disney? That was their philosophy for this park. Imagineers were told to repurpose existing ideas, rely on off the shelf rides, and keep construction efficient. The result was a park themed entirely around California, built for the people who already lived there. It's hard not to see the contradiction. DCA was meant to turn Disneyland into a multi-day destination that would attract international visitors. Yet it was designed around a theme that meant almost nothing to them. The California theme made sense in a boardroom, but on opening day, guests found a park that felt more like a road trip brochure than a Disney story. So when Disney California Adventure opened its gates on February 8th, 2001, the company expected crowds to flood in. Executives have projected full capacity weekends, over 30,000 guests a day, and a quick return on their investment. Instead, only 8,000 guests showed up on opening day. And that low turnout wasn't a fluke. It was a warning. Attendance continued to lag far behind expectations. For every person who walked into DCA's gates, there were more than two spending the day next door at Disneyland. And the reviews, well, the reviews weren't kind. Critics called it a state fair with better landscaping. Fans complained it felt cheap and weirdly corporate. And perhaps the most troubling of all, it didn't feel like Disney. And that's because at its core, DCA 1.0 broke all of Walt's golden rules. Every land should transport you somewhere you can't go in real life. This park, well, it did exactly the opposite. Instead of fantasy worlds, guests found themselves touring versions of things that already existed just outside the gate: wine country, Hollywood, a boardwalk pier, and a miniature Golden Gate Bridge that looked more like photo backdrop than landmark. Even the entry plaza was a parody of Los Angeles, complete with a giant California letters and a sun fountain surrounded by palm trees. Not exactly escapism for locals who'd driven from Burbank. But inside, the park leaned heavily on irony. Sunshine Plaza played like a travel brochure. The Golden State area featured exhibits on tortillas, sourdough bread, and wineries. All charming, but not exactly escapism or thrilling. And in the Hollywood Pictures backlot, Imagineers built a land that more poked fun at movie making instead of celebrating it. And it was here that one of the most infamous Disney rides ever created made its debut: Superstar Limo. Originally conceived as a high-speed chase through Los Angeles with guests pursued by paparazzi, the concept was reworked after the tragic death of Princess Diana. The final version turned into a slow-moving dark ride through caricatured scenes of Hollywood filled with celebrity cameos and over-the-top jokes. Joan Rivers waved from the red carpet, Regis Philbin smiled from a cutout cardboard limo, and riders rolled past a puppet version of Whoopi Goldberg, frozen mid-wave. It was neon, it was chaotic, and it was strangely lifeless. A rare Disney ride that felt dated on opening day. Of course, fans roasted it immediately. Within months, Superstar Limo became a symbol of everything wrong with the park: flashy, cynical, and disconnected from Disney's emotional storytelling. But here's where the story takes an unexpected twist. Because those same ride vehicles and animatronics actually got a second chance. When Imagineers later transformed the space into Monsters, Inc., Mike and Sully to the rescue, several of those figures were recycled into Monstropolis citizens, so those once awkward celebrity mannequins found new life as friendly monsters waving from the sidewalks. A perfect metaphor for the park itself, reusing the bones of failure to build something better. Now, Disney knew the park needed more than paint and quick fixes, though. And within months of opening, they scrambled and added shaded areas, entertainment, and more recognizable Disney characters. They even brought back the Main Street Electrical Parade, not for nostalgia, but to lure visitors away from Disneyland and give DCA a pulse at night. And by the end of 2001, the park was averaging about 5 million visitors annually, roughly half of what Disneyland saw. For a Disney park, that was a serious problem. And as if that wasn't enough, the September 11th attacks later that year sent tourism across the country into a freefall. Even the locals weren't coming. So California's Adventures troubles were suddenly more than creative, they were existential. And by 2007, it was clear that the only way forward was to rebuild, not just renovate. Disney had to do something it rarely does: admit that the entire park needed a second draft. By the mid 2000s, Disney California Adventure had earned an unfortunate reputation. It wasn't just a park people disliked, it was a park that people mocked. And executives heard it loud and clear. And guests wanted more magic, more emotion. Well, more Disney. And in 2007, the company finally decided to give them exactly that. And what followed was the most ambitious overhaul in Disney history: a 5-year, billion-dollar rebuild that would completely change the park's identity. The first thing to go was the park's original front entrance. Those giant California letters, the abstract Golden Gate Bridge, and the Sun Plaza fountain, all of it was torn down. In its place came Buena Vista Street, a love letter to 1920s Los Angeles, the era when a young Walt Disney arrived in California with a little more than a suitcase and a dream. It was a brilliant piece of storytelling. Where Main Street USA in Disneyland captures the small town America of Walt's childhood, Buena Vista Street reflected his future. It's hopeful, bustling, and filled with creative optimism that built an empire. Every inch of it was steeped in Disney lore. You found a shop called Kingswell Camera, named after the street where Walt and Roy opened their first office. Mortimer's Market nods to the original name Walt gave Mickey before Lillian talked him into changing it. Thank you, Lillian. Even the manhole covers read East Jordan Ironworks, an authentic touch from the 1920s. At the center stands the Carthay Circle Theater, a stunning replica of the movie palace where Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs premiered in 1937. The restaurant inside became one of the best dining experiences in any Disney park, serving as both centerpiece and symbol, proof that Disney's storytelling and craftsmanship had returned to DCA. And right there at the front of the street, a statue called Storytellers, Walt and Mickey as travelers, gazing out toward the park's new horizons. For fans, this entrance finally gave the park the soul they were looking for. If the front of the park was getting a heart, the back was getting needed energy. Enter World of Color. Debuting in 2010, this nighttime spectacular transformed Paradise Bay into a massive water stage, more than an acre in size, packed with over 1,000 fountains, fire, lights, and projection effects. It was colorful, it was emotional, and it was perfectly Disney. For the first time, people were staying in California Adventure after dark. The restaurants filled up, the shops buzzed. It was exactly what the park needed: a reason to stay and linger. Then, in 2012, came the land that changed it all: Cars Land, and my favorite land of all. This was Disney's apology letter, its victory lap. Built on what had once been an expansion space, Cars Land was Imagineering at its absolute best: immersive, cinematic, and full of heart. When guests walked through the town of Radiator Springs, they weren't seeing a movie set, they were inside the movie. Every neon sign glowed, the rockwork cliffs of Ornament Valley towered in the distance, and the anchor attraction, Radiator Springs Racers, became an instant classic. It was thrilling, beautiful, and emotional, exactly the kind of experience the original park had been missing. Cars Land alone cost more than $500 million, a bold investment that paid off instantly. Critics called it a home run. Fans called it Disney's best land since New Fantasyland, and attendance skyrocketed. A year earlier, the park debuted The Little Mermaid, Ariel's undersea adventure, a charming family dark ride, and it reimagined existing areas like the boardwalk, giving them stronger visual and narrative cohesion. In one stroke, Disney California Adventure had gone from what were they thinking to what took them so long. By the time Buena Vista Street and Cars Land officially opened on June 15th, 2012, Bob Iger declared it the rebirth of the Disneyland Resort, and he wasn't wrong. Attendance soared past 10 million guests a year, and for the first time, people began spending multiple days at the resort, just as Eisner had envisioned decades earlier. The difference? This time, Disney led with story. And the idea, leading with story, it's what's guided every update since. So by the mid 2010s, Disney California Adventure had found its footing. Cars Land was a smash hit, Buena Vista Street had restored Disney's feel, and for the first time, guests saw DCA as a worthy companion to Disneyland, not just the park you visited when the other park was full. But even with that billion-dollar glow-up, Imagineering wasn't done. In 2018, Paradise Pier underwent a transformation, opening as Pixar Pier. The shift celebrated Pixar's incredible storytelling legacy, bringing familiar characters like The Incredibles, Toy Story, and Inside Out to life along the boardwalk. The reimagined Incredicoaster and whimsical Jesse's Critter Carousel added energy and cohesion to a land that had once felt like a generic seaside fairground. Pixar Pier reinforced what Disney had learned. Guests wanted deeper, themed, character-driven experiences, not broad concepts about California. Meanwhile, one section of the park still struggled to find its identity: the Hollywood backlot. Originally meant to celebrate California's film industry, it was a mix of soundstage facades, generic sets, and attractions that never quite landed. Superstar Limo had already come and gone. It left behind Monsters Inc., Mike and Sully to the rescue. And the area's big draw was the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. And that hotel opened in 2004, and of course, it quickly became a fan favorite, just like it did on the East Coast. Then came a seismic shift. In 2017, the same tower reopened with an entirely new identity: Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout. The change caused an uproar at first. Fans mourned the loss of the spooky old Hollywood charm of the Tower of Terror. But Disney had a bigger plan, one that reflected the company's new direction. With Marvel Studios now under the Disney umbrella, Imagineers were tasked with creating a space that would serve as the foundation for a full-fledged Avengers Campus. This land could connect Marvel stories across the globe. Mission Breakout became the first piece of that puzzle, reimagining the former hotel as the Collector's Fortress, stuffed with cosmic artifacts, Easter eggs, and cameos. Its wild drop and bounce ride profile matched the chaotic energy of the Guardians movie perfectly, and in classic DCA fashion, the risk paid off. Crowds returned. The park's identity evolved once again. Now, by 2021, Avengers Campus officially opened, transforming the Hollywood backlot into a vibrant, high-tech hub for Marvel heroes. Guests could sling webs with Spider-Man on web slingers, dine at the tongue-in-cheek Pym Test Kitchen, which is home to oversized pretzels and tiny sandwiches, and see live action battles play out on rooftops above the streets. The Quinjet gleamed in the sun, a promise of the next big Marvel ride still to come. But Avengers Campus wasn't just another land, it was a statement. It cemented DCA as a park that no longer needed to be about California. Instead, it was about stories born in California, the creative powerhouse that built Disneyland, Pixar, and the Marvel Cinematic Universe itself. And in a poetic way, that transformation closed the loop. The park that once struggled to celebrate California had finally found its voice by celebrating the imagination it inspired. So if Disney California Adventure's first decade was about survival and its second about redemption, its third is all about expansion. The park that couldn't decide what it wanted to be has found a new identity, even if that identity now stretches far beyond California. So in 2024, the Anaheim City Council approved DisneylandForward, a multi-year expansion project that will reshape the entire resort over the next decade. The plan gives Disney something it's been craving since the 1990s: freedom. Instead of being locked into its old footprint, the resort can now repurpose underused land like parking lots and backstage areas into new theme zones. For Disney California Adventure, that means major changes and, well, probably some emotional farewells. The first confirmed shift comes with the closure of Monsters, Inc. Mike and Sully to the Rescue in early 2026. In its place, a full-scale Avatar experience inspired by the moon of Pandora. It's poetic in a way. The old Superstar Limo building, once home to DCA's most notorious flop, will again transform, this time into lush alien world filled with bioluminescent forests and floating mountains. But that's just the start. 2 more projects are already on the horizon. There is an Avengers Campus expansion and a Coco attraction coming as well near Pixar Pier and Paradise Gardens. So together, these expansions represent more than $1.9 billion in investment over the next decade. That's not a facelift. That is a creative metamorphosis. From WestCOT's unbuilt dream to the affordable but flawed first version, from the billion-dollar rebirth to the IP-driven present, the park's evolution mirrors Disney's own journey. It's a story of trial, creativity, and relentless reinvention. I love Disney California Adventure, mainly because of the 2 lands mentioned above. Cars Land is the best theme land. Now I know what you're saying, Beth, but two. I get that. But Radiator Springs came to life in an animated movie and not sets like in Star Wars. You feel like you've been transported into the movie when you enter Cars Land. And honestly, I get a little upset when I catch my reflection of myself and I'm not in car form. No, I'm kidding. But you know what I mean? Like, it's so immersive. You feel like you've walked into the movie. Now, I also love what some people call the glorified hallway of Avengers Campus, but I love that area for a totally different reason than I like Cars Land, and that is the character interactions. Interacting with the Marvel characters and watching them interact with each other is so much fun, and I'm really excited to see what this next evolution of both Avengers Campus and Disney California Adventure has in store for us. And with that, we add another stamp to our pop culture passport. I hope that this episode inspires you to get out and explore all of this quirky and cool, even in your own backyard. Follow, download, and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Tell a friend and leave a review if you like what we're doing. It really helps the show grow. You can also follow me on Instagram or Facebook. Just search for The Roaming Yeti. Keep roaming and finding your fun.